Welcome to TSC Chats, episode 3 with yours truly, Rachel, Ashley, and JJ. Hello.
Hello.
I'd like to say we're finally getting the hang of this podcast thingy. So this time I will actually introduce our guest. Last time I didn't really do that. This is Steve Smith. Steve's joining us. Hello,
Hi, Steve.
Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Hello.
He's a partner.
How is everyone today?
We're doing good.
Great.
Great.
Steve is a partner at TSC, and we're so happy to have you with us. Thank you for joining. He's going to bring all the smarts.
Thank you for asking.
Yes. You mentioned that, we're really moving, like you said, like we're going into an upturn era, but it is truly like a new era for the industry. And so it seems like there's like foundational things that people are reconsidering for their business, like their full go-to-market end-to-end, their position, their messaging, their brand. Like we're seeing a lot more of that type of work. I know I am. We've talked about that. So I feel like it's like some companies out there are sensing it and like they know things are changing. But one of the parts of the brandscape that I really liked, you had a particular slide where you had a ton of different specific trends to keep an eye on for like our marketing compadres specifically, some of that being messaging, like your brand, things like that. So maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the things that marketers need to keep an eye on specifically, like what is 2025 going to look like for them? What should they be paying attention to? And what's going to happen if they don't too, because that's a reality.
Yeah, and I think that's those are all good things to be bringing up right now. I think that what we're definitely seeing is thinking about Brett's book and really talking more holistically about customer experience, which has been very much a B2C concept, but now is really kind of moving to the forefront in B2B. I think that there's definitely an awareness that you need to be thinking about your customer experience holistically from that first brand touch through the marketing and sales process to how you're onboarding customers, how they're experiencing your product, and then how you're nurturing the success of your customers. And so I think a big part of that too has been, what's your brand going to stand for? And what is the market narrative that you're fitting into? Yeah, I think that there's definitely many iterations of that in different categories that are equally as profound, but it really kind of points to what's your brand narrative and your brand dynamic going into 2025 that really is top of mind.
Yeah, we played this game on this podcast a couple of times now. Want to keep it going on like, is it broken? Is it breaking? Or does it need change? And I feel like if we take this talent intelligence kind of messaging purview, do we think the people that are trying to like jump into talent intelligence or talking about talent intelligence is like an example of where messaging could slightly be breaking? Like they're throwing themselves into a box that could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people.
I think that it's not so much broken as it is evolving. I think that talent intelligence is very much an example of how AI is really kind of changing the entire market landscape. And if you think about really the promise of talent intelligence is bringing better workforce data. As we're getting into this sort of agentic AI era, being able to decouple the data from the application and use it in a lot of different ways, I think that there's a huge opportunity for talent intelligence companies across the board, but a lot of it is how do you kind of fit your narrative into that evolving reality of agentic AI.
So obviously, investing in your brand, getting your messaging right, carrying that forward so you're not only consistent with the customer experience that you're trying to create, but differentiated in the market is important, which is very much one of the 7 trends that you highlight in the brandscape. What's another go-to-market trend that you feel like is important for marketers to be actively focused on going into 2025?
Well, I think that, we've talked a lot about moving from a connect and convert world to a connect and engage. And I think that a big part of that is, especially when you're staking out a position in the market, it's how are you going to lead with insight and provide personalized value to the problems that your prospects and your customers are facing. I think that part of the dynamic we've seen over the past few years has been employers that have problems that need to be solved, but they don't have budget or buying authority, and so they've been kicking the can down the road. How do you engage those prospects in a way that puts you in a position to be the early favorite vendor?
Yeah.
And a lot of that is really what's the value you're bringing to their consideration of the problems they're having, and how do you continue to engage with them over time? So I think that having that compelling point of view is really important, but also then how you're bringing that into action. And we talked about this a lot in terms of the shift from account-based marketing to kind of what we call account-based experience is really an example of that change from that connect and convert world to that connect and engage world.
Yeah, I know the movement from ABM to ABX is also one of the trends that you feel like is important for marketers to really be paying attention to going into the new year. And I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and it's interesting to consider how events can play into it as well, which Steve, I know was one of the, key trends that you feel like is important for companies to be, actively evaluating their relationships with events and how they approach events in the new year. So what's your perspective on events?
Well, I think that events are still going to be a critical part of the go-to-market mix. However, I think that a lot of the just sort of like checkbox, we're going to go to this conference because everybody's going to this conference is really going to change. And I think that a lot of what I'm seeing in the conversations that I'm having is less of an emphasis on sort of those marquee industry events and more of a focus on smaller, more exclusive feeling executive events that are designed to really, create that engagement like we were talking about
Hmm.
earlier, but also the way that especially this new generation of buyers wants to engage with brands is very different. I think we're seeing brands, change their event strategy to speak to that reality.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of folks going increasing the number of events they're attending, but decreasing the number of events they're sponsoring, so that when they are sponsoring, they're able to provide like a cooler experience than like I had a 10 by 10 booth in the upper left hand corner by the bathroom kind of vibe.
One of the things to consider too, as you're actively evaluating which events you have some form of presence at, considering which events have a high concentration of your target accounts and targeted buyers as well. Meaning, like, take a critical look. If you're going after, a certain subset of organizations, where are they going to be? What's their expectations for these shows, and try to create an experience that represents a high concentration of your targeted buyers and also resonates with what they're hoping to achieve and can receive value from by interacting with you at those particular events.
You can't necessarily go into like a one-off show and say, okay, I'm going to spend this much money. I'm going to get this specific ROI for it, because that's not, I mean, I would argue for a long time that has not been the reality, but it definitely isn't now. And it's part of like an event or whatever you do for marketing. It needs to be part of that larger experience strategy, because there's so much like crossover you can do from, yeah, I'm reaching out to these contacts, I'm having these conversations, find a way to like make that work with your event strategy.
So, what are some of the other ones that you highlight in the brandscape?
Well, I mean, one is, understanding the limits and opportunities with PR. I was talking about this with our very able colleague, Matt Lee, and, who's been kind of a cornerstone and pillar of our PR team for a while. But what's interesting is you look back at, the sort of the insatiable demand for contributed articles and
Hmm.
help generating content back in 20 and 21. um, Really a lot of that has fallen off the table. And I think that a good chunk of that, I mean, and this is sort of Matt's perspective, and I agree with it, is, generative AI really providing a lot of those that content support for journalists, whether
Mm-hmm.
they're trade journalists or writing in other contexts. And so I think it's made it a lot harder to kind of break through all of that. And really kind of the way that we are looking at is like PR can still be effective. I think that if you know, really understand what and how you're evaluating the ROI of it. So yes, so I think that PR can still be effective if you really have an understanding of, you know, how the ROI should be measured. But uh, in a lot of ways, investing in brand building campaigns is a better use of those go-to-market dollars. Again, kind of pointing back to, you know, getting your brand ready for an upturn in the market. That's definitely kind of a reinforcing trend there.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things you also talk about in the brandscape is how marketers and organizations could be considering AI for their own usage to help support these ongoing campaigns. So, do you mind speaking a bit to that as well?
Yeah, I think that you know a lot of it is. I think that there's a lot of people out there on go-to-market teams that they're already using AI more for things. But you know what's really interesting is we kind of look at what agentic is going to do for kind of the go-to-market function. Is there's really a lot of limits to what large language models can produce in terms of quality content or quality
Yeah.
insights. They can handle discrete tasks and provide a lot of um, uh, automation and acceleration that way. However, in terms of really kind of those really profound impacts, a lot of that is going to be putting together AI agents, you know, multiple agents to work together to produce a higher level of quality across the board. It's hard to do. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the way that go-to-market teams need to approach that is not just finding the right AI solution, it's finding the right AI partner to help you in this agentic world to really kind of configure your AI agents to best support whatever is your priority and whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it makes complete sense and also ties into a lot of the other things that we were talking about earlier in the podcast. So, there's one other trend that you talk about in the brandscape, Steve, and it's about, your relationship to like cost. Do you mind speaking to that particular trend? Because admittedly, that's the one I know least about. So, I'm really curious to, get your perspective on it.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, a lot of this goes down to pricing strategy and, you know, the sort of the established SaaS, um, pricing model of pay per seat, I think really is in a position to be completely upended by more of a pay per use model, which you're seeing really be a big part of AI pricing. And so I don't think it's going to completely turn everything upside down overnight. I don't think that you're having to worry about your pricing strategy completely going south or getting upended in Q1. But I think it is going to change a lot of go-to-market dynamics more sooner than later. And we're really pushing our customers to get ahead of it by understanding, you know, what are these strategic changes going to do to, you know, everything across the board from your customer experience to your product experience, and especially how you're monetizing that product.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your insight. And if y'all haven't checked out the Brandscape, this is not intentionally a shameless plug, but it is actually some really good information. So check it out. And yeah, if you have any questions about it or you want to hear more or, whatever, you can always let us know. But yeah, thank you so much, Steve, for joining today
Thank
and
you.
chatting with us.
Well, y'all are very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Until next time.
Bye.
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 Bye.